What happens to the mortgage during a divorce? Not something we like to talk about, but unfortunately, it's something that we deal with quite often. If you or someone you know is getting a divorce and they own a house, here's what you need to know about the mortgage component of the divorce. First, please know that this is not legal advice. And if you're going through a divorce, you absolutely want to make sure that you're consulting either a mediator or an attorney, because they're going to be able to tell you specific rules and laws based on the state that you live in. My discussion today is really just about the home lending part of the equation, not only with the current mortgage, but for future mortgages. All right, so now that we got that straight, one of the first things to keep in mind is that getting a divorce doesn't automatically mean you're off the home loan or not responsible for the mortgage if the mortgage is held jointly in both of your names during the time that you were married. This is really, really important because as people go through the divorce process, many times the divorce decree will warrant or allocate the home to one of the parties, and the divorce decree will indicate that they are going to retain the home. Now, sometimes in that divorce decree, maybe there's an agreement that there needs to be a refinance of that home loan, but sometimes that refinance can't or doesn't happen. And when that situation goes on, I think a lot of people think, well, it was in the divorce decree that he was going to keep the house, therefore I'm off the hook. But that's not the case in the bank's eyes. And I tell you this because I have seen this scenario more than once, where somebody went through a divorce, the house was awarded to the spouse, and they retained the house, and the party thought that they were out of it. But then the person that retained the home and kept that mortgage and didn't refinance, guess what? Once they go late on that payment, if they decide to foreclose or they short sell, it's impacting the other person's credit. Because again, the bank isn't going to say, hey, they got a divorce and so is no longer on the home loan. The only way to release your responsibility in the bank's eyes is to have the person that's going to keep the home refinance you off of the loan. This is it. Not even if you sign a disclaimer deed or a quitclaimer deed, like that's only taking you off the ownership. We're talking the home loan. You have to have the person that's going to keep the home refinance your name off of the home. I can't say that enough. I've had thousands of these conversations. I've seen horror stories. I've seen situations where people have been divorced for 10 plus years and their ex-spouse has been maintaining the payment and then all of a sudden doesn't, and the house forecloses. It's a hot mess. So if I can tell you anything, making sure that you really understand what it means if your spouse is going to retain the home and maybe they're going to buy you out and give you a portion of the equity. We're going to talk about that in a second. But if they're going to retain the home, that person needs to refinance. Bottom line, end of story. Okay, now, what are our options? Let's say that your spouse is going to retain the home, and we know that your spouse needs to refinance, but now there's equity in the property that you want to access as part of your agreement to let your spouse keep the home. So there are some financing options out there that we have available, and one is really great. It's kind of an equity buyout type of scenario. So we will determine based on your direction of how much equity that you want and you have agreed to with your spouse. Maybe that's coming through the divorce decree, maybe it's a mediation agreement, and maybe it's just the two of you have had discussions and you've decided that one party is going to get X dollars. You can leverage a refinance, and we can do it all at once. So we can now refinance your spouse, taking your name off the home loan, and as part of that refinance, we can also tap into the equity if there's equity in the property to give you that equity buyout. So that is one option, and there's a very unique program out there that we use quite often to satisfy this type of scenario. The other option is sell the house, right? In that scenario, again, then you're both in a position where you're wanting to sell the house, and then you'll split the proceeds or whatever the agreement is through the court or you personally. That's the other way that you could access the equity in the home. So hopefully this is helpful to you. Again, I'm not giving you legal advice, but absolutely want you to be sure that you're thinking through this. If you sign a disclaimer deed, it doesn't mean you've been released from the actual debt obligation in the bank's eyes. Also keep in mind that if you're in the divorce process, and let's say you've decided to sell the house and that's being done, but you're not legally divorced yet, and you're going to take those proceeds and you want to purchase a new house, that's okay. But depending on your state, you want to know that if you're still legally married, especially here in Arizona, which is a community property state, your spouse is going to have to sign a disclaimer deed on the new property that you're purchasing. So again, your attorney can give you guidance on that, but if you have questions from the home lending standpoint and what it's going to take, be sure you're talking to an experienced lender that can help walk you through the details of this type of scenario. Please take a moment to subscribe to this channel. I have a true passion for education and want to help you make informed buying decisions that ultimately will help you build wealth over time. If you have questions, please comment below or give us a call or text 480-725-0150. Until next time.